Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me, as always, is my good friend and my dear sobriety companion, my also producer who makes all of the goodness happen in the studio, Dan the Man, everybody. Say hello, Dan.
Hey, everybody. How's everybody doing today?
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are glad you're here. Today, we're going to do some real talk, and I mean real talk, about some things we should be discussing more within meetings. I understand why they don't, but I want you to know that you can come here and get some solace because we're going to talk real talk about this stuff today. Having said that, I'm going to put a disclaimer out front. If you are sensitive to talk about suicide, if you are not in a good place right now, if you stick it out, I think this podcast will uplift you because there is a very powerful tool within recovery that when we share our dark shit, it heals. It's just the way it goes. That's therapy. That's recovery. But if you're not in a place to hear it, I would advise you go ahead and close it out. Come back later. Go talk to your supports, and please let people know if you're having any issues with suicide or thinking about wanting to hurt yourself. As a therapist, I'm well trained on looking for the signs and for how to help people who are in crisis. And I'll never forget the video they showed us of the guy who jumped off the Golden State Bridge before they built the little catch nets because so many people would go there to do that from all over the country, all over the world. And he said, if somebody had just looked at me or put their hand on my shoulder or just saw that I was in distress, I would have not done it. And he said, in the minute I let go of the railing and I was watching it fall away as I'm falling to the ocean beneath, I knew it was a mistake. I knew it was a mistake. So please, if you're in that place, it is a mistake. We call it a permanent solution to a temporary problem. Don't do that. Your problem will get better. This too will pass. However, if you can, stick this out. I think it'll bring you some solace, and I think it will help you with those feelings. Because there's one constant I've run into with myself and my own journey in recovery, and for a lot of our friends out there who have really suffered strong consequences with this disease or any addiction. Remember, this podcast is for everybody, so I don't care what your monster is you're dealing with. But you get to a point of frustration where you're just, I can't do it. You just want to give up, And all my patients and every newcomer comes in thinking they're the only ones who have been to that dark place. Bill Wilson called it the nadir of despair, which, as I understand, is like the center of the center of the center. Like you're in that, so deep in that despair, and you're like, there's no light. And I think he does a wonderful job explaining his experience with that in the chapter of Vision for You. But I wanted to talk about my own experience, and I want to invite you to really open up and feel free to not have to hide this. I think hiding anything in recovery is death. There's no other way to put it. And I was taught by my sponsor, be truthful, be honest, be truthful, be honest, and don't worry about where the chips fall. Except, we're not going to hurt people with truth if we need to tell a white lie or not hurt their feelings. I'm not talking about that. But I mean, if you're really in a dark space and you need help, you've got to speak up. And the hand of the recovery will be right there to help you, I promise, the second you ask for help. But this was Bill Wilson's experience. I think these are some of the most powerful chapters written in the big book. He says, for most normal folks, drinking means conviviality. That's like the joy of life, talking to people, having a great time at a party, companionship, and colorful imagination. It means release from care, boredom, and worry, all you anxiety folk out there. It is joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good, but not so with us in those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an insistent yearning to enjoy life as we once did, and a heartbreaking obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do this. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. And the less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society, from life itself, as we became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm. The chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us have sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. We've all done that. Momentarily we did, and then would come oblivion, and then the awful awakening to face the hideous four horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Now and then, a serious drinker being dry at the moment says, you know what, I don't miss it at all. I work better, I feel better, I'm having a better time. These are my people in group having their pink cloud effect in their first week or two, and I'd have to be very patient to just let them know this won't last, but also let them have their little moment. But yeah, as ex-problem drinkers, we smile at such a sally. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep his spirits up. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take a half dozen drinks and get away with them. That's the key phrase, get away with them, that it won't burn me this time. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. He cannot imagine life with alcohol or without it. Someday, he will be unable to imagine life, then he will know loneliness, such as few people do. He will be at the jumping off place, and he will wish for the end. Now, it's been taboo in our society forever, and still is today, to talk openly about suicide. Talk about that darkest space that you have to go to sometimes awaken to change. And in Bill's day in the 30s, it was triply, quadruply, unimaginably. You don't talk about this. But I admire his courage, that he shares his story, his experience, strength, and hope. And he knew somehow that how vital this would be to reach people who are going to read it if it's watered down and say, well, you don't really know what I'm going through. You ain't never been where I've been, buddy, and you ain't seen what I've seen. And believe me, that is how I hit the doors of recovery. That's how everybody hits the doors of recovery. You don't know what real pain is, motherfucker. Right? You cannot be an addict or an alcoholic without having an entire dark side, an entire experience of living in that darkness. So there's several instances in this book where Bill is talking about giving up. He talks about in here, should I kill myself? Right out there in the open, boom. And he says, no, gin would fix that. Now, I'll go into meetings and sometimes rattle the cages if I'm asked to speak, and I'll start by saying, alcohol and drugs saved my life. And I let the dust settle as everybody goes. It's right here in the big book. Gin saved Bill's life that night. He had that option to get high. And I remember being in my New York shithole apartment, keeping company with the cockroaches. And I wanted to stop more than anything else in the world. And I'm telling myself, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't give in, don't give in. And the craving was just unbearable. And I went to my kitchen. It was a kitchenette. It's literally a closet with doors with a little sink in there, a little hot plate. And I grabbed a knife, sharpest knife I had. And I went over there and put it right to my wrist. I did not want to end my life. I wanted to be out of pain. I wanted something else than what I had at that moment. I needed a mood-altering substance, but I was trying not to use. And I finally said, F it, as it broke the skin, and threw it on the floor and went out and got some dope. And that saved my life that night, having that option. If the option to use was not available, I think I would have gone through with it. I have several stories of almost dying and giving up. And Bill has several in here. He talks about this mental torture he went through when he was trying to withdraw. I swayed dizzily before an open window. You know what that means? You think about jumping. Or the medicine cabinet where there was poison. Meanwhile, cursing myself for a weakling. So even as he's thinking about giving up, he's saying, what's wrong with you? Pull yourself together. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps, man. Then came the night when the physical and mental torture was so hellish, I feared I would burst through my window, sash and all. So I somehow managed to drag my mattress downstairs lest I leap. Imagine. Your wife's watching you drag your mattresses downstairs saying, Bill, what's up? Hey, man, if I don't do this, I'm going out the window, babe. You got to understand. I'm just there. And I don't play on this topic. And I see a lot of cowards in the program not willing to go there or to even entertain or listen to a person that needs to talk about their shit with this. When was the last time you went to a meeting they talked about getting to that dark nadir of despair, giving up, suicide? Why are we not talking about it? People are dying. And they're dying because they think nobody understands. They're dying because they think nobody relates. They're dying because they think they're weird or I'm a mental weakling. Cursing myself for being a weakling because I don't have the moxie to keep going. Alcoholism is the ugliest thing on this planet. It's disgusting, it's nasty, it's dirty. And then we come in and we dress up in our little Oxfords and our little wingtips and we look all good and pretend, well, I'm healthy now and I'm good. But that darkness, if you've not done the work, is still inside you. If you've been to that place, that nasty, scummy person is right there until you do the work to heal that and be free of that. And the main reason I wanted to bring this up today is to start a dialogue and to let you know you're not alone if you're in this place today. I'm praying to God that somebody is watching this who needs to hear this, that do not give up. Do not give up. There is hope. There is a way out. We have the exit door. And we just need to hook up with you. You can email us here at iam12recovery@gmail.com. That's iam12recovery@gmail.com. And we will do our best to connect you with resources. But don't give up. I had an experience one night where I was so drunk, I don't know how I made it home. I think I hit a car or two, but it was just minor damage. And when they got to the window and they figured out I was drunk, I remember a guy raising his hands up and going, oh, fuck, and he just went like that because his truck wasn't really damaged from me bumping him. I was trying to follow him back home. I literally had gotten so turned around. You know how you use so much that you don't know where you are? And it's familiar territory. You're just like, what happened? But somehow I got home and I was just so wasted on alcohol and I just didn't need anything else. But I went into the medicine cabinet and I found my mother's old tranquilizers that they used to give tranquilizers to wives through divorces, help them stay calm. This was a 70s thing. And I took the whole bottle. I think it was Dalmane is what it was called. I don't even know if it exists anymore. And I don't know why I did that. I know I was in pain and I know it just needed relief. I just wanted to get out. I just wanted to fucking give me something. Because I'm losing all hope. I have no reason to hold on here. I got to get out of this. And I couldn't have told anybody I was in that place when I was in that place, right? We don't share that shit. There's somebody in your meeting tonight who's probably in that place. There's somebody in our meeting that was in that place recently. I just found out they were in that place. I had no idea. If I had known, I would have reached out and grabbed that motherfucker and hugged him up and said, dude, hold on. Your brain's lying to you. Your disease is lying to you. There's no reason to give up. So I took that whole bottle, and the next day my mother comes home from work and finds me still dead out to the world on the bed, basically comatose. And the doctor told her, well, you're going to have to watch vigil over him and see if he dies and monitor his life signs because she had some medical training. She had a little stethoscope and blood pressure cuff and all that. And I did that to my mother. That's sad, but it's true. It's horrible. Put her through that. But of course, like any dutiful mother, she wondered afterwards, maybe my boy needs some help. And so she brings, God bless her, she brings this priest over, and it was the cool priest, it's the young guy that's kind of like, hey, I get you kids, I understand you do drugs, And yeah, I'm not picking on him. He was fine, but that's my mind, right? And he asked me straight out after a while talking and letting my guards down. He said, did you really want to kill yourself? And I was like, no, I really did not. But I almost did. Just like that guy going off the railings, I almost did. Fucking crazy, right? That's the insanity of this disease. When step 2 says, restore me to sanity. And we walk around meetings like we got our shit together. Meanwhile, we're not telling our sponsor or the people who care about us what's really going on with us. And maybe that's the goal of today's talk. is to get you to fucking reach out and tell somebody what's going on with you. Stop sugarcoating it. Stop being afraid that they're going to judge you. And you know what? If a motherfucker does, send them to me. I'll punch them out. If a guy reaches out at his nadir of despair and somebody goes, oh, well, you need to work your program. Ooh, bro. Don't let me hear you do that to a newcomer. Don't give a guy platitudes when he's dying. Don't give him a fucking cliche when he's got his fingernails on the cliff barely hanging on. And you're going to put your boot on him and say, let go, let God. It's insane. I don't know what the current statistics are, but it's a lot of people that will give up the fight today. A majority of them, this is a stretch, a lot of them will be addicts and alcoholics. The reason why I said majority is because the statistics tell us that addicts and alcoholics mostly die by their own hand. That's how we go out. We take ourselves out. And all for what? Because I'm just not being truthful about what's going on. I have nobody to talk to. And I think nobody would understand. When I was in New York, I used to walk the streets thinking, I'm just going to kill myself or kill somebody else today because I just have had it. And I'm not a fighter, but I would walk around and look at people like I wanted to start a fight. I don't know if that was just to feel something, if somebody pummels the crap out of me, or just get my rage out. Again, did I want that? No, but that's just what was going on. But I guess what I want to do today is just start an honest dialogue and for you to reflect with yourself about being in that place of loneliness and feeling like you're cut off from the world and nobody can possibly understand what you're feeling. And you don't even know how to put it into words. And I don't want you to feel alone today, that's all. I don't want you to feel like you're on your own. I understand. I've been there. You can come back. And if we get you back, you can use everything you learned in that place to help a guy save his life. You have a valuable superpower. Because you know how to talk real to somebody like that, not give them what you read in some manual. It's very scary to be in that place. But don't listen to the lies. Don't let those voices in your head lie to you. Don't let them tell you it's a good idea. Don't let them give you all that crap. Everybody around, and most people have an access to a 800 number for suicide, for sure. But then everybody that might be dealing with alcohol and drugs, there's a thing called a home office, and you can look up the number for A or NA. And all you got to do is say, I need some help. Those are the only words. Now, I know those are the hardest words we have to say when we're in that place, but that's what you say when you call. I need some help. I'm in trouble. I found that easier to say rather than come right out and say I was going to kill myself. I could never say that till today. Literally in sobriety till I got healed. I could never have used those words to admit that I ever got to that place. Again, there's just that curse of, well, you're failing or you're a weak man or something's wrong with you. Yeah, no crap. Something's wrong with me. Duh. But that's what addiction does. It's a hallmark of addiction to put you in terror, frustration, bewilderment, despair. That's its calling card. That's what it trades in, like an arms dealer. So don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if you bring this up in your home group meeting. Once it gets past the nervousness and the uncomfortability, if it's a solid group, somebody will take up the challenge and say, hey, I'll talk. I had that happen to me too. You know what? I've been there. I know what that's like. I also believe that not losing touch with that is a powerful, powerful aid to stay sober today. To know that that's where alcohol and drugs takes me. Just speaking from my own experience. If I'm lying to myself saying I'm going to use to have a good time or to party, it is nothing short of a charade. I know for a fact today, if I use, I'm going to that dark, quiet place where I'm going to close the curtains and wall out the world, and I'm going to hide in my hole and just destroy myself with that chemical. I know how to self-sabotage. I know how to destroy myself. Like a professional, almost. Don't let it happen. Don't let it happen, please. I beg of you. So I know it's early in the podcast, and I know it's been some heavy talk, but I want to get my friend Dan in here, and we'll get a little dialogue going about two alcoholics talking about being in our lonely jumping off place. And I know for a fact when he was sitting in the backyard that night after his crime scene, I bet he was feeling pretty despaired at that point. So, Dan, any thoughts on? I know it's a tough topic, but let's see what we can do here.
Well, I just was decided to go. There's apparently a 988 number like 911 that is an emergency number for if you're having a problem with that. 988.
Thank you for that. 988, folks.
Simple.
People who have been through this usually, because it takes a really evolved, advanced spiritual soul to work those lines, right? Somebody that really cares. They're waiting to hear from you. They want to help you. So please reach out and at least say, I need help, to just talk or whatever you need.
The CDC's numbers, I guess 2022 was the latest, how it falls behind a little bit. It said 49,000, and we peaked, like we rose to a peak at that point. One death every 11 minutes.
Jeez.
13.2 million seriously thought about suicide. 3.8 made a plan. 1.6 attempted it. I don't know what that based on time-wise or whatever, but interesting.
Well, I know like our rates of happiness being in the toilet and our anxiety and depression rates soaring. We're also hearing that rates of suicide are soaring, and especially among youth. I heard this story about a child this past week who was like 12 or 15. It was young, and I was like, what? That's just tragic, man. You haven't even had a chance in life yet.
Yeah. That's what one of the things I was sitting here looking at a chart, and it had a chart went down to 10 to 12-year-olds, and
unbelievable.
And certainly where did it go? The biggest one is 85 plus, 85-year-old and over. Because quality of life had gone to crap, and
they haven't. I read this article many years ago saying that the baby boomers drive change, and if you had bet on that in the stock market, you'd be rich as beyond belief today. But one of the drives change they're going to get is once they find out that medical interventions aren't going to make their life better, they're going to drive the right to die movement, just like Oregon has already.
Yeah.
But I don't, once you get to a certain point, what's the point?
I listened to a podcast the other day where there was a gal talking about it. Males make up 50% of the population, but nearly 80% of the suicides.
Wow. I think that's got something to do with us stuffing our anger and stuffing our feelings and things like that, I would wager.
Yeah.
Because we don't talk, and that's what I'm telling everybody, the listeners, please speak up.
I stood on the street that night, and of course it was late. It was 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning before I came back. I think I left about 9 p.m., a little bit after that, and I didn't come back until 2 or 3 in the morning. But I stood out in the street over here thinking about stepping out in front of a vehicle, and I was like thinking it would be good if a semi come by right now. And, so much time wanting I don't think I ever had to, I didn't get to a point where I had the guts to actually do it. But there was a whole lot of time that I would have been real happy had I not woke up in the morning. I remember one time making a plan to maybe make it look like an accident. So like if I would crash into a big tree or something, and then, because the old thing about I didn't want one of my family to get the life insurance, and I've always heard this thing that if you kill yourself, you don't. I don't know if that's even true or not, but those kind of things, like that kind of silly thoughts, actually probably saved me, and I'll agree with you 100%. Alcohol and drugs saved my life, because I was even at that young age of like that 14, 15-year-old age, I was in such a dark spot for really no real good reason. Things were okay. But I didn't have, there's something missing. And dope and booze kept me alive. Because, then it changed my deal. But I would like to not wake up in the morning for a long, long time. As I sit and go through my memory banks, there were some times where I had planned it. I thought the world would be better off without me. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to stop the pain.
What's fascinating, though, is you're talking about that statistic about 1 every 11 minutes. and we're not talking about it. And, you know, you and I have talked about pretty much all of our stories, and yet I'm still finding out more. I didn't know about stepping out in front of a semi-deal.
Yeah.
But again, we don't talk. Remember, it's the one thing, it's almost like it's taboo. Even some people might be reacting right now and say, well, you guys are kind of getting me down. We're not trying to get you down. We're trying to invite you to say, if you're feeling dark, that's part of the human nature. Carl Jung talked about the shadow self and how you have to embrace that dark side of you to be a fully rounded, healed human being. And we all have that. We all have that capability to think about killing somebody or just getting angry and just say, fuck it, I don't care anymore. You know, but we don't do it because hopefully our cortex is stopping us. But we're not talking about it. And I just worry that maybe there's somebody in our group right now that's on edge that we don't even know.
Yeah. Well, that has happened just recently.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, the guy reached out for help and is getting help right now. I had a really good friend that shot himself when I was 16, when we were 16 years old. And at that time, his dad was a raging alcoholic. And when I mean raging, I don't mean like a terrible. I mean like he was full of rage. You didn't want to be around John's house when his dad was home and drinking. And John got the same thing. And by the time we were 16, John, you know, I could plainly see, I didn't know anything about alcoholism now, but I knew John was an alcoholic. He was a daily drinker, and he got smashed at that age. And he killed himself. And then I had another good friend who, in his early 20s, he had a family. He struggled with alcohol, struggled with stuff. His mom and dad was always taking him to treatment and doing stuff. And of course, we didn't, you know, we were doing the same stuff he was doing, so we were rationalizing our side of it, that his mom and dad were goofy. And he went out behind his barn, and I think at that time he had 2 kids and a wife. He was in his early 20s, and shot himself. And then when you come to recovery, the amount of suicides you see when you get here, whether for, you know, I don't know how many of the overdoses are potentially on purpose. You know, they've overdosed on purpose. Now, you know, I know there's also accidents, but and you never know. You know, we lost. You know, to this day, when I thought I had that plan a long time ago to run that car into a tree, and I even had a hill up in the knobs in a big old tree where I could get some real good speed going, and had, you know, marked a location, and that makes me think about Jesse when he died, that he ran into a tree, and it's like, man, I wonder if that was an accident. Because he was not in a good place when it happened, obviously. So yeah, you go back and you start. I saw an old friend the other day yesterday at Ace Hardware. He's a guy I ran and gunned with, and his wife just died in July from cancer, and you know, she was a big smoked all the time. But in February the 3rd, I just saw on my calendar today, she would have been 10 years sober. But this dude's down, and you can feel it in him. And, you know, like when he said, he goes, let's sit down, let's drink a couple Coca-Colas, man. Why don't you come by and see me? And I know he's struggling from the loss of his wife and that kind of stuff. And he goes, you know, we can sit down and we can talk about all the people we know who are dead.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
He's in the darkness, man.
Yeah. And you could see it.
You know, it's interesting how the Dr. Silkworth, and I love picking up little clues in the book that I think people just overread, and just like I've heard it so many times, they're not realizing what he's saying here. But he says, there are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving, which is me in that hotel room with a knife to my wrist, not trying to use, but I have the phenomenon of craving on me because I just used the other day, right? So I've got the knife to me. That's the situation that's arisen. There are many situations which arise out of the phenomenon of craving which cause men to make the supreme sacrifice rather than continue to fight. Notice how he doesn't use the word suicide. He couldn't put that in the 30s. And again, if that's true about Jesse or anybody else, then their family's going to fucking close the ranks and say, well, we're not letting the world know that that's what he did because that's taboo or that's looked down upon or whatever, you know, and we judge people.
Shame.
Yeah, shame, you know. And meanwhile, people continue to die, and it's getting worse. So we're doing something wrong. I think talk is always good. We need to have dialogue, you know. And The other thing that happens is, I was on the shame element. It's something about, well, I mean, depending on what kind of family you came from, it also could be a curse in your family, too. I often think about the Hemingway family and how there was this generational curse of people committing suicide within their family. And that is actually kind of a thing that's being measured by in psychology or whatever it is. I'm not sure, but you can look it up. But it's just a weird kind of generational curse that gets passed on, depression and then leading to a bullet to the head or whatever. But yeah, we don't never know how many of those might have been intentional, especially the overdoses. Like you said, if you had that mindset where if I just don't wake up in the morning, then why not take that extra drink that is one toe over the line and then it's too late, right?
Yep.
So,
yep. And like you, lots of people get in their medicine cabinets and purposely take stuff in order to end their lives, and some make, some do, but there's a hell of a lot of stories out there where they didn't, like yours.
And so I'm a very practical-minded alcoholic, as I've said many times on this podcast, and I talk real talk about shit, and I'm not afraid to be challenged on my thinking or my ideas. I love to get new information. And I just heard a patient say it today, and I've always had a beef with this saying that God won't give you any more than you can handle. And being an alcoholic drug addict who's been to that dark place, I'm like, well, what about that guy? He killed himself. Apparently, he got more than he could handle. What the hell are you saying? And what are you also saying that God's giving you this? God didn't give me that pain that day. My addiction was giving me that pain. The devil, the demon, the king alcohol, whatever. It's just weird shit that we do. And you're implying by saying God didn't give you more than you can handle. Well, you're saying, though, somehow you failed that day by killing because God wouldn't give you more than handle and you failed the test. I don't know. It's just bizarre. And again, we're all dancing around. Just like we danced around my alcoholic family, not being able to talk about dad's drinking, we're all pretending that the big elephant in the room is not there. So, I'm inviting you today, and this is the goal of today's podcast, that first off, if you're in a dark place, reach out. There are others who can sit with you and console with you and say, I've been there, let's talk about it. I'm willing to hear it. I'm not afraid of it. I'm not afraid to hear you talk about where you're at and what's going on. And I want to encourage anybody out there that maybe bring it up. Talk to your sponsor about it. Find out their story. Do you really know what the dark place your sponsor went to? Do you know what that's like for him or her? And when I was in that dark place, I would feed the fire. I'm reading Dostoevsky. I'm listening to Pink Floyd. Dark. I'm just getting darker, dark about humanity and about life. And it's almost an addiction in itself. It can be. It's almost like a sinkhole. And just step foot in it, it'll start pulling you down. So maybe that's the goal of today's podcast, is to give you some antidote, something to fight against that. So, but the main one is talking. I've got to speak up. I've got to talk about what's going on with me. All right. Any other thoughts, Dan? Again, I don't want to beat a dead horse on this, but funny joke.
Just gotta, like you said, you gotta talk about it if you're in that place. You're worth it, and people, that's the thing. One of the things that stopped me a lot was thinking of the pain I was going to cause my loved ones, and I've seen that, the way Billy went out, and to do that to your loved ones, you don't want to carry that karma.
You reminded me of my sponsor's story, Dr. Burns Brady, God rest his soul. He got to the point where he put a shotgun in his mouth and he was ready to pull the trigger. And of all the ways you could commit suicide, I think that's a real statement you're saying about, I am really pissed and I really want to leave behind a statement of fuck you all, this is a bullshit. But he just happened. And when he tells this story, he gets emotional and tears flow. And it's always gets the whole room moved to tears. And he talks about he looked across and his picture of his grandbabies was on the side table. And the way he phrases this is just absolutely recovery gold. He says, for the first time in my selfish, self-centered alcoholic life, I thought about the pain I would cause those babies, and the pain I would cause them was greater than the pain I was in. And I took the shotgun out of my mouth. And if you stick around, you're going to have so much to live for, and it's going to get better. We forget about this too will pass. We forget about temporary problem, permanent solution to a temporary problem. Change is inevitable. It always happens. As the sun rises, it also falls. So you're going to be up, you're going to be down. And just don't make a decision when you're very emotional anyway in recovery, because that's never a good idea. One last thing I'll touch on is look around your room at some of the old timers too, and don't exempt them from being in dark places. Like I said, I've been listening to a speaker who's killer recently, and he was talking about a guy in his group blew his head off at 10 years sobriety. And nobody knew. They thought he was a solid AA dude. But he wasn't doing his work in here to heal. You can get sober as you want. You can put down the drink. You can read some steps. You can do a little steps. But if you don't reach in and heal that kid inside that's wounded, it's going to be your undoing. And for any old timers out there, I'm going to beg you, fight through your little tapes. They're telling you, but I'm an old timer. I don't have to work on my shit. I already know all this. And I'm a teacher now. I'm a sponsor. I got my shit together. Nah, dude. My experience with working on my stuff is that there's always more. And it's really interesting that I'm in a laboratory where my patients are bringing up their stuff every day. And I'm almost constantly reflecting like, oh, do I have something still left there? Or is there something there I need to look at that, oh, does that still bother me? There's something a patient brought up about their family system that reminded me of, I know it was our friend who got some help recently. And he was talking about this awakening he had about his dad. And I was like, shame. And I was like, whoa. That's triggering a button in me. I can see that there's some work there. The shame element with my father. And again, when you're making these decisions, bad decisions, it's not just today's stuff. It's all your history that's loaded onto that. Because your inner child, we talked about in our episodes, going, that's like this, and that's like this. And they're feeding the fire. So please, please stick around. And please reach out for help. There's so many people waiting to help you. And when you reach out to us, we'll help you. I am one too. Recovery.org. That's I am one too. Recovery.org. Can we end on a positive note, Dan? What's worth about sticking around in sobriety? Just a minute or two on that.
Yeah, man. I am so, what's that? What's darkest before the
dawn? It's in the big book.
And
how dark
think
it
about
is before the dawn is what he said.
Yeah, and just in a me kind of thing, the stuff that I would have had missed had I followed up at night or any time before it. These miracles, my multi-page miracle list, and the cool stuff that's happening. That last night Scott Lee called me on the telephone. I mean, that is so cool to me. And just every time, and I've talked to another person on the other podcast the other day of moving through life today. I moved through life today pretty optimistically, almost as a child coming down the steps looking at the Christmas tree, on Christmas morning. What is going to be the next cool thing I'm going to get to experience in this life? And you can get better. You can heal. These tools will work. There are tools out there. There are people that will help you get through this dark spot. And then, as another thing it says in the big book, that some of the worst things that will ever happen to us end up being, that's the turning point. It ends up being the best thing that could happen to me. My dark spot was what allowed me to have this life I have today. And I think I just encourage to think about it that way, that you can overcome this stuff and have everything you want and more.
There's if you remember the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and John Candy gets on Steve Martin's nerves to the point where he just loses it and starts yelling at him. It's like, I'd rather go through any insurance seminar than sit here and listen to you anymore. And he gets very emotional. It hurt him. You could tell it just stabbed him right in the gut. And he looks at it and says, well, you know what? I like me. And you know what? My wife likes me. And it's to me, it stirs up my emotions, because for anybody that's out there, you have no idea that there's people that love you so much and don't want to lose you. I have been to so many funerals, and the most common discussion at an addict or alcoholic funeral is, how could they not know how much I love them? Why would they not call me? I would do anything. I would walk, crawl, whatever on broken glass. One girl said from Florida to Kentucky. If my brother needed that help, I would have fucking given up everything. So remember, this disease will put you in that self-centered spot where you can't see straight. And it's a lie. You have people who care about you. And what I would have missed is not only can we get other people to care more about you in recovery, because you're going to be one good dude and one good gal, but you're going to like yourself. I had the weirdest thought today, like, you know what? I like myself today. And I was kind of like, you know? I know that sounds goofy as hell. And it's not a like Stuart Smalley or whatever from Saturday Night Live going, because you're good enough. And it's not that. It's just this weird, like, I have a total acceptance of all my flaws and my shortcomings, and I'm not happy about all of them. I want to work on some of them, but there's just this general like, you know, dude, you're a good dude, and you're doing good in this world, and I feel good about myself, and I like myself, and I didn't have any of that prior to recovery. None. My family had trained me on shame, guilt, and self-loathing. I didn't know how to like or love myself, let alone love, not even like. So just think about that if it makes you smile when you're in that dark place. John Kennedy going, well, I like me, and you know what? My wife likes me. You know, there's people who do care about you, and we do. And I hope you've picked that up from this podcast. We love you dearly. That's why we're here every day, every week, doing this for free, because we want to help. So let us help you. And with that, we will shift gears and we'll get into our question and answer period, where we take questions from you, the listener, on any topic you want to talk about. I swear to God, I keep throwing this out every week and nobody's taking me up on it. Write us about what name to call your dog. I defy you. Write us on, well, not on what to call your kid, because we won't be blamed for that. Write us on whether or not you should get your toenails painted pink or red. I'll read it. Some guy made a joke comment on the Discord right now about, well, something is anatomy. I said, if you wrote it in, I'll try to answer it. I'm not going to do it on that, but if you write it in, take the effort, and you're anonymous. I will never tell the peeps who wrote the question, okay? And I shred these afterwards, so they're gone. So again, send your questions to iam12recovery@gmail.com. iam12recovery@gmail.com. And we love you. Thanks for listening. All righty, here we are in our question and answer period, so let's get right to it. 2 questions for this week. First question is, what is the difference between denial and delusion? What is the difference between denial and delusion? A world of difference, actually. So you'll hear a lot of people that they'll throw out this statement, alcoholics are actually in denial, right? And we tried that approach in treatment in the 80s, literally backing people in the corner, poking them in the chest, saying, you need to face reality, you're in denial, blah, blah, blah. And that's assuming that the alcoholic has a grip on what real reality really is, that they know what it is and they're intentionally breaking the law or doing what they shouldn't be doing while fully knowing what's going on in their life. But Bill Wilson, if you read the big book, does not use the word denial. He uses the word delusion over and over. And I know for a fact he got that from Silkworth, because Silkworth uses the word delusion in the first part of the big book. And delusion is that beast where you have a break from reality and you don't know the true from the false. It literally is the persistent and unyielding conviction or belief in something despite overwhelming mounting evidence to the contrary. Did you miss it? I'll say it again. The persistent and unyielding belief or conviction in something despite overwhelming mounting evidence to the contrary. So just the other day, I'm talking to one of our psychiatrists, and they said, I don't understand your patient. They should have known better. If you go over there, you know you're going to drink, so why'd you go over there in the first place? And I said in the other podcast, I said to her, well, you don't have our disease, because my brain goes, I could handle it. That's not that serious. Now, my wife or my friends or whoever's around me has watched me do this 1,000 times and fail. They know I'm going to go over there, and they know I'm going to get too drunk, and they know I'm going to probably drive home drunk and maybe get a DUI. They know all that, but I literally can't see it. I literally cannot see it. That's not denial. Denial is not, you have to know what you're lying about. Lying to stay out of trouble. I got to know what I'm lying about. So delusion is a very scary beast. And I was listening to a speaker just the other day talk about delusion among sobriety members. When he hears anybody in a meeting giving themselves credit for keeping themselves sober today, or I'm going to make a choice to be sober today. That's one of the things the halfway houses in here in town, maybe it's nationwide, you can always tell a guy from a halfway house to come in, I'm choosing to be sober and then follow the big wheel, can do all this today. And it's like, dude, stop. You really still think this is a choice deal? You think you're sober on your own power because you put your butt in a meeting? You think you're the guy that's driving this? That's delusion, dude. That is totally out of reality with who you are and where you came from. Remember that day when you could not drink no matter what? Remember you couldn't put it down? So suddenly now you've gotten this power back because you've done some duels? You're okay today somehow? That's that pure insanity, and I love how he challenged that, because I said, yeah, it is kind of easy to fall into that. Like, I'm going to my meetings, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Yeah, good job. There's nothing wrong with patting yourself on the back and feeling good about yourself and taking compliments. I think that's vital. I am doing the work, so I deserve some kudos. Hey, good job. You finished your 4-step, whatever. But let me never lose light of the fact that it is a power greater than my own that is keeping me sober today. It is not my power. It never has been. And you will hear people throw out these odd comments at meetings that you're like, dude, I think you've gone back into delusion, that you've lost sense of powerlessness. Because it is not me keeping me sober today. I have access to power greater than mine, that when I work these spiritual principles in all of my affairs to the best of my ability, one day at a time, my life goes great because God handles the rest. I call it God today. I couldn't do that in early recovery. Use your own higher power, whatever works for you. Call it your group, call it your sponsor. But that power that's not me is able to do for me what I can't do for myself. Period. End of story. That's why I'm here today. That's why I'm here helping you all. This power has given me the enthusiasm to say, hey, we're back. When, before we came back from break, I was kind of sitting there falling asleep. That's power that I did not have that flows through me. It's available to you too. So don't get those confused. Denial and delusion are totally separate beasts. Denial is what you're doing, and you're intentionally doing it on purpose. And and I'm not saying an alcoholic doesn't have some idea that if he does this, it's going to burn him. I'm not saying he doesn't know that, but it's this convincing of myself that it won't burn me as bad, or it won't burn me this time, or I can get away with it. We keep touching the stove. And then our friends around us going, when will they ever learn? What the hell? So, any thoughts on that denial, delusion, difference, or anything like that, Dan?
I'll say once again, I sit over here at this end of the table and learn something every week. Because I didn't, when you read that question, first thing I come up with was, I don't know what the difference between denial and delusion is. I will just tack on that, I don't know, I get pinged at times when I do hear people express, like you said, that somehow they're doing this, and it, I'm like, that's probably not a safe place to be. I'm here because I surrendered, and I remain surrendered to this power that's given me all the stuff that I've got in my life. And but there is a funny little thing that and you touched on it about, because I'm getting up and, like what Paul Hederman calls us, the action figure. You're just the action figure. And you're getting up doing this and thinking that's you doing it, and it's really not. And it's a funny concept to follow. It goes along. He talks and he goes along with the stuff, like he asks us questions, and I always ask my new guys these questions. I said, "Do you have a house?" And he said, "Yeah." And whose house is it? Mine. You have a wife? Yeah. Whose wife is it? Mine. You got any kids? Yeah. Whose kids are they? Mine. And you can run them down through there where they're doing that bondage to self exercise. Basically, like, you mean you really think your wife is yours, that you own her?
Or your house? It's the bank that owns your house,
right.
kiddo.
You got that thing paid off. But
Yeah, it's interesting to listen to him. If you maybe look him up sometime, he's got a different character.
Say his name again.
Paul Hederman. Here's the name of his stuff. Zen Bitch Slap is the name of his.
I love it.
Yeah, you can find him on Facebook and YouTube, and he's doing talks, and he brings a different angle, and I like that he brings this different angle. He's the one that I picked up the parasite thing from. That this is like a parasite and it hijacks your operating system. When he said that, I went,
wow, or like a computer virus that hijacks your computer's operating system, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's where he goes into that action figure thing, that we're just kind of being led around and it matters what are you going to be led around by. Are you going to be led around by this parasite and be operating under its control, or are you going to allow yourself to access this power and allow that power to lead you around, and you get the blessings from that, operating under those ways. But he says, in and of yourself, you're really just an action figure. You're just moving around.
Well, and I relate to when you said that, like, I have a spirit, I have a soul, and that soul is connected to the other world, and there's energy that's coming through, whether it's energy from the sun or from nature or from God or from the universe, whatever. But that's the animate part of me. Otherwise, I'm just in a shell here without the fuel to run this thing or the spirit or the plug-in. I'm just a bunch of bag of bones. Yeah. That's all it really am.
That's what he always says. This is just a vehicle.
But when you talked about surrender, it pinged me too, because I listen to these speakers, and again, I have a different brain. Not really. It's just keen. And I hear some things, like these guys are telling me about what they're doing on their daily practice. And I'm like, if you're telling us you do this and that, and is that bragging? Is that your ego? Did you have to tell me you spent 12 hours meditating and you do a 20-page inventory every day? And I'm like, dude, yeah, it might be a little extreme there, you know what I'm saying? So when you're talking about surrender, I believe, as this old-timer's point of view, it's a frame of reference for my spirit. It's a sincerity. It's an action. It's a way I walk through the world. Rather, if I hit inventory every night, I don't believe that. I don't believe that missing inventory is going to get you drunk right away. But I do believe if I unplug from the source and I begin to take the power back, thinking I'm running the show, I'm going to be disappointed because the show is not going to go the way I want it to go, and these guys just won't listen, and I'll get a resentment, and I'll be at the bar saying, well, they didn't listen to me, and now their company is doing this. And he's like, I'll be in charge of the world, as I tend to do. So, it's that spirit of surrender that, I do have a higher power, and he's going to handle the world. I'm going to do the christen. He's going to do the God. And, and there's going to be a flow of partnership there. And I never want to forget that, because my life goes so much smoother when you have that power in it,
Yeah, and it is. It is the easier, softer way. It really is, because I just kind of get to jump in the stream of life and let it take me where it takes me, and don't get too bothered by anything, by the life's bumps and this kind of stuff. The old life on life's terms, just roll with it. Mm-hmm. This too shall pass. I'll go through a season of something, and something's not quite the way I want it, but you just got to weather it out, and it'll change.
On the flip side are the speakers I admire the most, and I try to model my actions after them, who say, this isn't my tools, and these aren't my opinions. This is what was taught to me. This was given to me by much greater teachers than myself. So let's not get that tied up in here either. This is not Christopher's methodology to get sober. This is the good shit that I've picked up from tons of geniuses, giants that walked before me. And now we get to become the next group of young lions that they called Miles Davis and John Coltrane and those guys that changed jazz. I love the phrase, because they're always passing it on. My mentor, Burns, has passed away. Now I have to carry his legacy. So anything I say, I will always tell you it's from my teachers. I've had good teachers, and I've tried to be a good student, and I've done my part. I will take a compliment. I've done my part, but it's not me making this stuff up. It's guys that have walked the fire, man. So great topic. Again, be scared. That's the main thing I tell my patients about delusion. You need to know that you're out of your freaking mind and cannot see the truth no matter how hard you try. You are going to lie to yourself, con yourself to take that next drink and have a perfectly good reason for why you did it, and you'll believe it. You'll believe the lie. It's just what we do. All right, second question for today. We only have two. Says, this is interesting. What do you miss about alcohol and drugs? What do you miss about alcohol? What? We can talk about that? Like, wait a minute. I'm an old timer. We're not supposed to talk about miss. What? Again, challenging norms. I think it's hilarious. Bill has a line in the big book where he says most newcomers are relieved to find out we're not witch burners. And I think what he's saying is it's okay to say that you want to use sometimes. And it's okay to say that you miss some things about using sometimes. We had good times. We had a great time until it turned. And never lose fact of the matter that it did turn, because you might convince yourself you can go back and recapture that. Remember when we read earlier that Bill was trying to recapture that early days, glory days, and it never worked.
The boomerang.
Yeah, I'm trying. Yeah, it comes back on us, man. So, but I wanted to challenge myself and challenge you, Dan, to really be some honesty about this. And I got to tell you, since we talked about the dark shit today, there is a side of me that misses sitting in that dark space. I got really comfortable with the low, dark lighting and the dark look and the dark clothes and the living dark in life and carrying that cross on my back of the sins of the world. And I'm just suffering, and my life is suffering. And it's and the sordid places with the sordid people, man, I can tell you that there's a comfort in that too. It's disgusting. If I went there today, I'd be like, get off me, you diseased creature. But back in the day, man, you want to go down and get dirty, I can go there. And it's a weird comfort that you can get from just being in your own filth and being in your own place of hopelessness. I don't advise it for anybody, but I do want you to know it's okay to say that you miss, or you just sometimes look back with some fondness that, New York City in the 80s was a rough-ass place, dude. You have no idea. Ask anybody that lived through the 70s and 80s, early 80s, before it got cleaned up with Edward Koch and all those people. Brutal. And I thrived there. I loved that violent, dark, scary place. The concrete, the pavement. I don't know. It's got a taste in your mouth. Anybody that's lived in New York. And it was exciting, there is an excitement to chasing alcohol and drugs. There's always drama going on. You get tired of it. I got really tired of the drama, the chaos, but, when it worked, it was all right. But I don't want to go back. I can tell you that with straight face today. I do not, with any amount. You could pay me any amount of money. I don't care how much Elon Musk has. I ain't touching it. I ain't giving up what I got. This is way better than living in that world. Way better. You need to hear that if you're new. What I'm talking about earlier, that doesn't even compare to how good I feel inside. Drugs could not make me feel this good inside about myself and about life in general. So, Dan, what is it that you miss about alcohol and drugs?
There was, and as you said, I had a whole lot of fun until it wasn't fun anymore. Alcohol has no draw to me. The pain pills don't have any draw to me, but I still have a euphoric
Marijuana.
Recall on tripping on acid.
Oh, interesting.
There was nothing. And I've taken I took a whole lot of acid throughout those early years, man. And it's hard to take a lot of acid because tripping full tilt is not like a way you can move through life,
No.
And we did learn to set, I remember the very first time that I tripped on acid. It scared me at first. I never did have a bad trip. I saw guys have a bad trip, but and today, when I listen to these people talking about, particularly these veterans talking about treating their PTSD, and
ayahuasca,
and all this stuff. Although they say what the ibogaine is, they said that's no fun. That is not something you want to do again. But listening to them talk about the mushrooms, and these people doing the micro dosing and all that stuff pricks my attic in there a little bit. Like, hey man, they're doing this for therapy, man. Maybe I can figure some way to work that in.
As if all the insight you've gotten with your recovery you need anymore.
Yeah,
like this one dose is going to make a difference.
Yeah, but it does. I get pricked by that memory, that recall. I never had anything bad happen to me while I was doing it either.
Yeah, and
so
again,
it didn't have any of that trauma attached to it.
This is good that it's coming up for this podcast, because this is something you should share with your sponsor and talk about. And I think the closer it gets to recreational use in Kentucky, it's going to be more of a thing that people are going to be like, I don't know, Dan. It's right there.
Yep.
And some of us old timers ain't touched the new stuff. We don't even know what that's like. We ain't even had the edibles. We used to have hash brownies, shit.
Yep.
And you'd still have the grain and the fucking battery.
Yeah,
Get out of your teeth and shit.
Yeah, apparently they make some really good pot brownies nowadays.
Yeah, trust me. But then immediately my thoughts, because I've been awakened with my own work in this program, goes to, and then comes the awakening the next day, though. I fucked up my sobriety, and I just lost my job, because you're not going to be a drug counselor if you're a fucking user.
Yeah.
And now you're 60, going on 63 years old, and you go, what, kill your lungs and die at 68?
Yeah.
So this is what we're doing here, you know? Because, it's the one weirdest thing about this disease, and I had a patient come back recently that was astonished that this happened for her, about how fast it got worse when she went back. And this disease progresses while you're sober. We all know that. Everybody that comes back says it got worse real fast, and it picked right back up where I left off, but then it got worse real fast. And I can't imagine 40 years of progression. Holy crap, how out of control would I be from where I left off? I was already trying to kill myself and hurting others. What the hell? So, yeah, there's no illusion that I could get away with it and do it, like the guy in the book saying if I can get away with it. But I think it's healthy to laugh about it, talk about it. I know drinkers will talk about missing the taste. Or, we're going to a Super Bowl party this weekend, and you know what? Most people would be tanked up for that shit. There might be some people, well, probably not at this party, but, I don't know, maybe family members might have some beer there, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so, but maybe.
Yeah, I don't think so either. It's a pretty solid do we're going to.
Yeah.
So, again, if you've got any of that, it's okay to talk about it. Talk to your sponsor about it. Don't hide it. Of course you're going to miss some things, especially if you're new. Just that pain relief of coming home after a hard day's work and just being able to veg out and watch TV high or play video games or something. That's a big one for a lot of my friends, is they miss playing video games high. One of my friends told me that the other day. So.
Yep. I've heard that too.
Yeah. And for me, the reason I said marijuana is because that's the one my patients find the hardest time to get out the mental obsession on. That one really lingers. And that just tells me the power of the strength of that drug nowadays. It's become more profound in my group and pronounced than heroin. And, heroin junkies are like, dude, you don't know how much I'm craving it and missing it. But marijuana is the one that's hanging on the most and the strongest.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. And I watch all that kind of like a scientist and go, useful information. Let me continue to observe. So, yeah, I don't need to get hooked on that shit.
It also makes me think, just because we're talking about it, and this thing about people who don't want to go to AA because all they do is talk about drinking and drugs. It's like, well, yeah, that's what it's not, like in our group, we talk about the solution more than we talk about the problem, but it's going to be part of what you're going to hear when you're in meetings, and it's a funny resistance to join recovery because of that reason.
It's common, though.
It's very common.
My advice for that person who might be out there who's thinking, yeah, I had that reaction, speak up, please. The minute you talk at a meeting, you've joined the group, so you'll have that camaraderie, and you'll feel useful because somebody in that group maybe needed to hear you say that, and the demon's going to be scurrying away, and you won't feel that way when you leave. It's usually the guys that will listen to all that, and then they don't express, hey guys, you're triggering me. And we would say, okay, that's cool. Tell us about it. What's up?
Yeah.
And
tell me more.
And you would leave without that hangover. So please talk about it. If that happens, it's common. Just say, hey man, this is triggering to talk about this shit. I've been in groups where guys have been doing some war stories, and we're like, all right, that's enough. We don't need to all go to the bar right now. That's enough for me. Let's stop this shit right now. So, yeah, I think that's healthy to do both. Exercise the demons talk about, but also say, okay, discipline 007. We're not going to do that. That's enough talk about that. All right, great podcast. Appreciate everybody. I know we went to a dark place today, but my overall goal, I want to help the person out there who still suffers, hence the topic of the podcast today. So please, again, if you're hurting out there, dial, what's the number, Dan?
988.
988. Couldn't be any more simple than that. Person on the other side is a very advanced soul with some great compassion and deep love and kindness. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing that job. And just talk to them. just talk to them. If you're more comfortable, call them from a public phone or a different phone if you don't want them to track you. But just reach out for help, please. Don't suffer alone.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. All right. Well, we'd like to end the podcast with the Serenity Prayer. Before we do that, if you could do us a favor and like, subscribe, or comment. It would be so helpful to us to get this message out to other people. So please like, subscribe, and comment. And we will try to help more people as we go. All right. So let's do the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today. Keep coming back. It works if you work it, and you die if you don't.
Woo-hoo!
We love you. Peace out.